Hello, Ramanaji, good morning.
Morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I'm able to hear you. Welcome to the Saturday Facebook Live session, sir. Thank you, Uma Katyan ji and Ramana ji for taking time to do this, agreeing to do this live session with us. For viewers who are watching, Mr. Ramanath and Uma Katyani are currently live from a very remote village in Karnataka. It's about 200 kilometers away from Bangalore. They are currently facing some power issues, power connectivity issues. So please bear that in mind. And if any time any technical issues might arise because of the power lack of power facility. Let me introduce Living My Promise to our viewers this Saturday. Uh, Living My Promise invites Indians to commit to giving half or more of their wealth to philanthropy, either during their lifetime or in their will, to a cause of their choice. Living My Promise is a self-driven initiative started by one of our promises, Mr. Girish Batra, and now championed by 50 others as well. This initiative, 55 others as well. This initiative is essentially a community of promises and is not an NGO. This promise is a moral commitment one makes to their own self and the public. Living My Promise is inspired by the millions of people of all income levels who give generously and often at a great personal sacrifice to make the world better. Living My Promise aims over time to help shift the social norms of philanthropy towards giving more, giving sooner, and giving smarter. We hope that through Living My Promise, we can create a community of like minded individuals who would like to do more and also inspire millions of others to re benchmark their levels of giving. Today, we have with us Uma Katyayani ji and Javali Ramana ji, both of whom are employees with Karnataka Power Corporation Limited. They're regular PSU employees on PSU salaries and no other income, and come from very humble origins. Early in life, Umaji and Ramanaji decided not to have children because they're of the opinion that there are enough children out there who need their help. They took voluntary service retirement, uh, one after the other, so that they can devote themselves to service in the social sector. Now they're spending bulk of their time in rural Karnataka in a village. What is interesting is they have joined Living My Promise as soon as they read about it in a newspaper article back in 2018, and they immediately signed up to the initiative. I'll be asking them, what gives them this kind of courage, and what exactly are the kind of problems they're trying to solve. How do they immerse themselves full time to philanthropy work? Hope will have not only this and many more answers from them. Uh, Ramana ji, welcome. Uma Kateni ji, welcome to the Living My Promise session. Hope you are doing well.
Thank you very much.
How is life, sir? How is life in the village? Can you tell our viewers where you are right now? What
It's
you're
a
doing?
serene place located around 200 kilometers away from Bangalore and maybe around 25 to 30 kilometers from Mysore. It's a place where there are a lot of lakes, lot of ponds, lot of channels of KRS Dam of Mysore. It is with greeneries and lot of vegetable fields and sugarcane fields. You get 110% pure oxygen, no vehicular movement. This is the senior citizens commune where you have
I'm very envious to know where you are right now. It seems like a fantastic place where you are, with all the water ponds and rivers and everything that you have just mentioned. So let me start the interview by asking you a first question. Why did both of you, being senior engineers in a state power corporation, decide to take voluntary retirement, and now you're running your own charitable organization instead?
So, good morning to all. Before I answer this question, I think I should break it down into two parts. One is about the voluntary retirement, and the second one is about the charitable organization. Fact is that both happened concurrently and coincidentally was not intentional. Maybe it was an act of destiny. We both are elected to Karnataka Power Corporation in the year of 1985. This is a state sector power generating company. And when we completed our degrees, there was hardly any chance for an employment in some other places because the whole power sector is under the control of either a state government or a central government. But getting into a government job those days was really simple because it depended only on your merit, talent, unlike what it is today. And being from the lower middle class families, our immediate requirement of employment was about clearing the educational loans that were taken from banks, think about clearing the dues of the loan scholarships, and above all that, we had to financially support our families. Even though we had the desire and aptitude to study by research institutes, study in a foreign university, these thoughts remained only dreams because financially it was not viable for us. We both joined the same company, Karnataka Power Corporation. We worked 10 years almost together, sometimes in different locations, but the thought of marriage never had occurred to us. When we were working in a place called Jog Falls, I think Jog Falls is a well-known place because it has India's one of the highest waterfalls across River Shravati. That was the place when we were posted both in 1996, and we were posted in the same department per se, so that we used to have a lot of professional interaction every day, which helped us understand each other better. Then we found that we shared many common thoughts and also a comparable degree of compassion for the surroundings. So that was when we got married in 1996. So from then on, it was our journey to different parts of the states wherever we were posted, to hydro, thermal, solar, or wind power station. But most of the power stations in any state are located in far off and remote places of a state. And we there live a kind of regimented life, like we are confined to our own colonies, and rarely you get a chance to interact with the local populace or try to find out how they live. So last 15 years, I was fortunate to be working as the technical assistant for the managing director of Karnataka Power Corporation in Bangalore. And Umaji was also placed in the same location in a different office. Around 5 years back, she thought enough is enough doing the same kind of thing, which will lead, I feel, into a kind of mental fatigue, and decided to take voluntary retirement. So after 30 years of service, when she qualified for full pension and all retirement benefits, she took a very conscious decision to take voluntary retirement. And the best thing she did was immediately the very next day, she started attending a teachers training program, which was being run by some NGO from London. So she went through that arduous task of getting trained as a teacher, 9:30 to 5 o'clock every day, without any break for almost 1 year.
It was tougher than doing.
It was, she used to tell me, that tougher than doing engineering. Came out of that course with flying colors. I took voluntary retirement in the month of February this year. I felt it is increased working hours, increased workload, increased responsibility, lot of traveling. So I think it also resulted in a kind of mental fatigue because I had already put in 34 years in KPCL. And maybe there was a desire looking at the corner of my mind that we should now try to do something different than what these days, but we always wanted to do. Now, talking about charity or philanthropy, whatever little we have done, spending a few lakhs, which doesn't have a big geographical, we can really call it as a charity or philanthropy. But really, the sense of doing something good for the public were so long back when we were children. We both hail from very remote villages. My place is around 500 kilometers away from Bangalore. Tickets. The times when we studied late 60s or early 70s, there was only one high school for a radio. Rather, students used to come by walk, traveling 5 to 10 kilometers either way on foot. And those were the days when there were no government welfare programs. These boys used to remain hungry the whole day, attend the academic sessions, attend the sports activities, and also attend something what we had those days called work experience, to work in the school gardens and do certain small repairs to the school infrastructure. We always used to wonder as to how these people stay in the class or the school without eating anything for the whole day, because we used to go home for the lunch, again come back, then again go back home at 5 o'clock and eat some snacks. Now I realize that those people used to remain hungry the whole day, drinking a few glasses of water, which was only thing that was really available. But very enthusiastically, they used to take part in all the college activities. When it came to sports or when it came to something which needed a lot of physical exertion, it was those rural boys who outsmarted us. Maybe because of sheer build or maybe because of the way they had undergone that hard life. Today, the things have changed a lot. There are a lot of government initiated schemes, like there is a midday meal in almost all the schools throughout the country. There will be so many CSR activities, there will be so many NGOs to help them. But the government of today is really doing a big job by providing them not only the midday meals, the uniforms, books, to the extent that certain state governments are providing bicycles to the high school student commute to the school less cumbersome. I remember after a time that we almost left the high school, in our village, a kind of a philanthropy started. Very 5 to 6 houses used to feed the afternoon lunch to the rural students without any benefit. And there will be 5 to 6 houses which used to do this great job those days. And there were some big houses who had used to be given to the rural students to stay and continue their. Those were the great souls who never philanthropy, never knew the definition of charity, but it was the amplification of pure humanity is what I consider those things to be. Later on, after passing SSLC, we went to our PUC nearby district centers, because those days the colleges were very few numbers. And the biggest threat of our life that we experienced while going into the PU was the difficulty of English language. The students were from the English medium background, and we were a few who came from rural areas who had done all our education in Kannada medium, hardly could speak a word or a sentence to converse. So this, in fact, in a way led to inferiority complex. I can remember a few of my classmates who quit studies, and there were a few who changed over to arts or commerce stream because there we had the teaching in Kannada medium. So this kind of inferiority probably we overcame by the end of the time we came to second year PUC. Even though we were able to understand what the teacher used to tell, even though we knew the answers for the questions he asked, but the very limitation of language skills and vocabulary really had put us on the back foot. And it was always those English educated boys or girls who used to be in the discussions and the teaching faculty. So I think English and mathematics, these two become very important obstacles to be crossed by most of the rural students.
Even today, it is.
Even today, when we are trying to go and help the rural schools, especially rural government schools, there is absolutely no faculty to teach English in a proper way, because the faculties are educated some 20 or 25 years back, and some course known as teachers. They are totally out of sync with the changed syllabuses, the advanced level of mathematics or science when we were in the schools. So after our PUC education, we both of us got very good marks, because physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biology are the subjects which do not require a great depth of language. So scoring in these subjects is not so easy. By virtue of our very high scores, both of us got engineering seats in a prestigious college in Mysore. But the next big question, how will somebody support our education for 5 years? Going to Mysore involved traveling a very big distance, go and stay in the hostels, or go and stay in a rented accommodation. We both had to take bank loans, had to depend upon to pursue our studies. As our parents, with 5, 6, even in my house it was 9 siblings, could not pull in all their money to just educate me, because every other sibling had the equal right for education. In my spouse's case, it was much worse. There was a big opposition in that village that a girl of 16, 18 years old to be sent to a far-off place like Mysore. It was basically because of paucity of funds, but it was given a very honorable color. I feel that no, girls will get morally corrupted. We should not send them to such places. So that was the environment in those days. However, I am really thrilled to tell you that it was ultimately my mother-in-law who told my father-in-law that if you do not send these girls to engineering, I am going to take my life away. So that's how a final agreement was reached that this girl, who is my wife now, should be sent to engineering. And again, the initial 1 or 2 years in engineering was again a fight with English. The great Queen's language, big difficulty. Again, there we met people who could very fluently converse, who can fluently write in English, which was our main drawback. This led to a kind of situation where we rural students without much knowledge of English forming our own groups to redress our grievances to ourselves. That was the time I decided that I should somehow conquer this language. And I started reading anything that novels or maybe any articles. In fact, James Hadley Chase was one of the most famous novels these days for English reading. Even though we were not able to understand 100%, we were introduced to different words which we never came across in our day-to-day life or college. And in a way, I think the learning of education is a continuous process, which even till date I am continuing to do. But in this meantime, I should say we always remember those noble unseen who had instituted several forums, several trusts, which came in handy for us to continue education, without which we would not have been what we are today, and we would not have been sitting in front of Sushant Ji for a question and answer session in LMP. So this in fact made us to think that we should at some point of life return whatever the society has given to us in such an abundance, without doing which we will be playing a big fraud on ourselves. So it was maybe around 2012, we were 20-25 years into our employment. We had earned sufficient money. We had respectable bank balance. Many of our dreams were completed, like we had our own house, we had 1 or 2 automobiles, and respectable bank balance, filled far and wide throughout the country and many of the important countries in the world. So my wife always used to remind me that her grandmother used to tell her when she was a kid that if you earn 1 rupee, at least try to spend 10 paisa for somebody who doesn't have anything. Really, they're all very large-hearted people who could think so good some 60 years ago. And charity is ingrained in everyone's human psyche, irrespective of how rich or how poor somebody is. Only thing it is, at some point in life, it needs a trigger to kickstart the engine of charity. So in order to have a definite path for spending in our philanthropic activities, in order to have a charity with a structured and systematic plan, we felt we needed to establish an educational and charitable trust. And so that we could set aside a definite amount of money every year to plan things and execute them. This is how we established this trust in 2018, which I have registered it. The focus of the trust is rural education, especially in government schools. I am sure maybe the background of us, our study in rural schools and our exposure to life.
We'll get there. We'll eventually ask those questions of what your trust is. It's very fantastic when you talk about, your experiences with English. I always wondered, with my own father, who also came from Telugu medium, but can speak fluent English. I asked him, how do you do this? All he said is newspaper. Every day I would go to the library and we would read newspaper. And that's how I learned my whole English, with the dictionary and newspaper. It's very fantastic. And also, ma'am, to be frank, your mother is such an awesome inspiration. To stand by you in those days to overcome patriarchal society and say, encouraging you to go for education is I think is very inspiring, and the values that you learn from them to give back to society is also very inspiring, and it's fantastic to know what you're doing. You shared some of the experiences, you also said, we need some triggers in our life, that charity is ingrained in our life. Can you tell me what was the trigger in your case?
I think I have partly answered this question. Anyway, there are certain few things which I would like to tell. Completing the 5 years of engineering or any professional education is not very easy, especially for people like us who were just eager to see either the bank loan dispersal amount or a scholarship amount landing in our accounts for our expenditures. Many a times, I should thank the government of that day, which had made the fees almost 50% for the economically backward students like us. So even though that small fees, we were unable to many times pay in time because we didn't have money. And this led to a lot of humiliation on continuous basis in the schools. It led to a kind of frustration or helplessness. But in spite of all these adversities, we continued our education. When it comes to related, happy that these people are maybe they thought that after becoming well educated, these people may never remain subservient to us. I tell you, it's the reality of life in most of the cases. It is either your well-meaning friends or acquaintances which will really help you in a rainy day. I still remember we had some classmates who had scored much better than us, or at least equal to us, who could not really pursue a professional or higher education. They had to go in for lesser fancied BA, BCom, or BSc, which was in government colleges, and there was absolutely no fees. Many of them are today working as teachers, clerks, and managers. So whenever I get to see the photographs or the list of ranked students nowadays in newspapers, I always think there are many, much brighter students who have missed this bus and give competition to these people just because they did. It's not out of place to mention, I wore my first set of slippers when I was in the 5th standard. And I wore my first set of trousers when I was in my first PUC. I had topped my SLC examination in our village. I was given 500 rupees as a prize money by some philanthropist in 1977, which I used to stitch with the local tailor, 2 khaki pants and 2 similar colored shirts, because then you used to get big rolls of clothes. And everybody in a household used to wear the same clothes because it was the cheapest way the parents could procure it. Just by seeing the cloth in the village, people used to say, oh, this fellow is son of Shripati Rao. This fellow is son of Venugopal Rao. So that was the way that we lived the clothes those. My spouse has a much better account to tell about her these things, engineering studies. She used to pass 1 full year with Hawaii chappals, skirts, and 2 blouses with a very ordinary quality of clothes. Textbooks, buying a textbook was never heard of. It was beyond our reach those days. And libraries used to have 1 or 2 copies of very important textbooks, which we used to wait in turns to get and study them. Today, of course, there is internet, there is a huge open source of information and knowledge. So today's students may not have to see that kind of a data. Maybe the cumulative effect of adversities faced in different points of life in our time, ultimately, I think, tilted us to travel on this path of philanthropy.
Yeah. We know that you made a very conscious choice not to have children of your own. Did you always know that you were going to walk this path of philanthropy?
So this is a very good question, because the time we decided not to have children and the time we decided to tread the path of philanthropy, there was a gap of more than 20 to 25 years. So I think these two cannot be related. But of course, you all remember that in 1960s or early 70s, the family planning was just kicking in. I have 9 people in my family. She has 5 siblings in her family. And the age difference between the first child and the last offspring is 10 to 15 years. My wife brought up until he finished his MSc. In fact, my sister-in-law, who is the last sister of my wife, was staying with us after we got employed and got married for almost 5 to 6 years. We got them married off. So even though we did not did not want a chance to do the direct parentage, we had enough expenditure of parenting the child even before getting married. Added to that, I think,
second mothers to our
she was second mother to all our sisters, because she is the second sister. And also, both our siblings are married and have procreated enough, so I have no fear that the carrying forward of our genes or legacy, even though we are not royals, legacy is and any act of philanthropy, I really do not think will matter. The family size will matter. Of course, when you have a family, more number of members in the family, the size will definitely determine your decision to set aside money for personal funding. But anybody who has got a bent of mind for philanthropy will certainly try to do it whatever magnitude possible and try to set aside some surplus for this cause.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. Most of the times we would think that philanthropy is about how much money we have, but as you mentioned, it is about the bent of mind, whether you have the bent of mind. Sir, you have committed to give 50% of your net worth to philanthropy. Aren't you worried that there might be future liabilities or sudden health expenses in the future?
A really very pertinent and thought-provoking question. Needs of a human being are minimum unless for a offbeat individual. So both of us get a very handsome pension, I should say, and we have got our retirement money, which is quite a good amount. That's why we were able to sign for LLP, and we live a very simple life.
Minimalistic life.
It is secondly, we are adequately covered very consciously for our health insurance, which keeps getting renewed every year. Not only that, in case suppose some emergency or eventuality beyond our capacity comes, where I can dip in and use it for my own sake. In a lighter vein, I should say that I have seen certain people so rich have encountered such problems in their old age that no money could help. So I have that kind of thinking. Above all, we believe in Dharmo Rakshati Rakshita. The verse Dharmo Rakshati Rakshita, we believe in our karma and believe in the God we think will take care of us if the situation still goes beyond our means.
Philanthropy will keep us healthy. That's what we.
And I want to add one more thing. Philanthropy, in a way, like you give, you see the enjoyment in those people who are coming up because of your philanthropical acts. It gives you a kind of joy.
Activities.
So these all things certainly will have an indirect health benefit, increase your longevity.
Yeah. Umaji, I have a question for you. I know that you said you don't want to talk, but it will be unfair if I don't ask you a question. You said your grandmother inspired you, taught you these values of giving at least 10 paisa of every rupee that you earn. Do you think your philanthropy has something to do with the values that your grandmother and mother are involved, or is it something intrinsic that you got it?
Grandma, whatever the values my grandmother instilled in, is the main reason for us to start this trust. It's the basics, I tell you. Not only even my mother, my father, they all used to say this. Whatever you have, with others. Okay. You cannot eat and see other people next to you. Okay. So in childhood, we were not rich. We were modest background, but despite that, the charity was there. It was organic in our family. We try to do whatever is possible to the people who, when we see them hungry and don't have proper clothes, like that. That's all we do.
Just to add, has a small brother, and there was one kid which was born almost along with him, was deserted by their mother, and that kid has been brought up by their family, who is living a decent life today. Even till date, we do not know where his mother is. Even though his father is there, he doesn't bother to take care of him. So that was one of the biggest things she has done.
Now he's a part of our family. So like that.
Wow, that is so amazing. But if you have to teach the next generation, Umaji, what will you say? How do we teach these values for the next generations, coming generations? What sort of role do parents need to play to be that to be that benchmark or that inspiration? How do we propagate these values in the future?
You see, self-interest is important, I say, till some age. When you enjoy your life, once you enjoy your life, when you see everything, when you get what to say, hang of things. Then at one point of time, you feel that, oh, this is enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Then
ma'am.
it is when philanthropy will come naturally. That's what happened in my case.
We conduct some 2 to 3 seminars, event area, school, and all other. Tell me, Prashant.
Yeah, I'm asking, what should parents do to teach these values in their children? Teach the values of philanthropy in their children.
One thing is try to bring them up with absolute poverty. Even you may be very rich, but not give them all the money you have. Make them to suffer at least a little, may not be full, at least a 10% of what their have-nots are suffering. So only when you really get a feel of the difficulties in your life, I think it is not very easy for someone who is a rich fellow to change his thinking and totally go in philanthropy. So through our trust, whenever we conduct personality development or many other seminars which are student oriented, we always tell them that this seminar is being run. This seminar I am running from my own funds to help you all people. So we try to even provide a value of charity in those events. If not, it's not of repeating it, we may inculcate a kind of thinking in those young minds.
You see, some of my friends now, they said we give this clothes to you. Why don't you give it to the children? Instead of buying 3 to 4 branded shirts to your children, buy one or two, give one new one to the rural child, like that. And most of them agreed and they're doing it. Okay, then what we tell them is, when you celebrate the birthday of your child, you get them all branded goods. Okay, instead you take them to some orphanage, make them to see the real thing of life, celebrate your kid's birthday with in the orphanage. So what's the difficulty of life? What is the difficulty the children of the same age are facing? Okay, so most of them are doing it now. Like that, we're trying to propagate in whatever way possible, but it is difficult. Most of them say they don't agree. You see, we have suffered, why our children should suffer? Let them enjoy, we have money, like that. It's slowly changing. It needs a lot of effort from, I think, from all quarters.
Sushant, one positive impact that I have seen, after we started doing all these philanthropic activities in the rural areas for the schools, many people come forward to help in bits and pieces. There is a fellow in her native place where we used to hire a Kalyan Mandapam from our activities. Now we have started giving it half rate. Then he said, no, this time there are no marriages. You take it free of cost. And many, etc., have joined hands with us to support the causes that we are doing. I think it may not happen overnight, but suddenly more and more people start doing it. You can instill a kind of thinking among people to do it on their own.
Yes, sir. See, the great perception in the society is that, philanthropy is for very rich people like industrialists or businessmen or people who have managed to do exceptionally well in life. Do you think someone as ordinary as a government employee can come into philanthropy like you did?
Or somebody who has reached this life, get publicized nationally. Two people like us who are very nondescript, who do not have crores and crores of rupees, come into the focus in the national as well as for our very small rupee. Personally, I feel philanthropy should never be measured with the magnitude, scale, or the. Again, philanthropy is an act of mind, and how much it can transform into action on ground depends upon how much one is able to give. So I think the present initiative of LMP of drawing people with 1 crore and above net worth into this philanthropical act will in a days to come will grow into a big tree. And when cumulatively put together, it may even surpass whatever being done by big trusts or entities. I, in Bangalore, while going to office, see displays behind a auto rickshaw saying free ride for pregnant ladies. Why don't we place this also somewhere between philanthropy or somewhere between charity? Even though he is a driver of an auto rickshaw, he still can carry someone who is really pregnant, whether she can afford or does afford to pay the charges, he still displays that I am going to do this. Similarly, we get a kind of raid in instances where an accident happens or where a floods happens, when there is a fire accident. So many people pitching to help. That is the instant kicking in of that philanthropical mindset inside, which is ingrained, is what I feel exists in everybody.
Yeah, yeah. Viewers have to bear with us. Uma Katyayani and Jawali Ramanath are like live from a very remote village, so that there might be some network issues and the bandwidth is low. So please excuse me. Sir and Madam, both of you being PSU employees, I have a question for you. How from Venkat Krishnan? How can we encourage more public sector employees to sign up to Living My Promise? You have signed up, fantastic. How do we get more public sector unit employees to sign up for Living My Promise?
Of course, as the things stand today, public sector employees, both government of state government as well as government of India, are one of the most well-paid people in India, irrespective of whether the PS is doing good or doing bad. But my own experience is, I normally keep talking about the trust, keep talking about the works that we are giving, we are doing in many of the groups and many of the forums where my very close friends or my very close colleagues are involved. In a positive response from anybody else, rather than a kind of negative rebuttals. I really don't think it can so easily catch up. That's it.
Ma'am, do you think we can do anything to sign up, other public sector units like oil corporations, like, mineral corporations? There's so many other things. Like you said, they're really well-paid employees. Do you think it is unimaginable for them to sign up, or they can consider?
Unimaginable.
It's really difficult to tell
But it is really difficult. I should not say, for example, I stay in a place where there are many seniors, where all the children are living abroad. They have very hefty bank balances. But when I try to tell what I am doing, it's not even given a 10 seconds of patient hearing, as if aapka dard hai, aap kar rahe. That kind of thinking is very prevalent. I don't know how and when we will be able to beat it unless it becomes more and more visible in the society, more and more people doing it. That should only be the way to take those people on to join this bandwagon.
I have discussed about Living My Promise with so many of my friends and colleagues. One, don't have children, so that you can do. But we have got children, so we have to take care of their future. Like that. Okay, in the future, something really good will happen, and many will join Living My Promise.
Yeah. I have another question for both of you. Many people find it difficult to figure out what charities to contribute to or how to get into philanthropy. Can you tell us what you do with your trust? How did you figure out the causes that you want to work with, and the people, the beneficiaries you wanted to work with? How did you kind of go about in figuring out these things?
So the cause was long back imbibed because we had seen the difficulties of rural education. So whatever we wanted to do, we had decided that we will start it with rural education. But when it came, most of people try to do it through some NGO or some. We were little jittery. We come across as many number of bad NGOs interest as the good ones. So we decided that if at all, we will do having our own trust, wherein we have the and to decide who should be the beneficiaries. The basic idea was first start doing it in my native place, in her native place areas, the better than. And I always believe in the statement that education empowers. We too are one of the many examples for what education can do to the life of a person. Education is key because it can give you a better future. It can make you self-reliant. It can make you more socially more recognized. In government of Karnataka's one of the educational programs and the campaigns, they have a tagline or a slogan called "Educating a rural girl is as good as opening a school." You see how meaningful it is. When you educate a rural girl, in the first place, she will be able to take up some job. She will be able to support the finances of the house. Secondly, she will be able to get involved in monitoring and seeing the progress of her children's education, which most of the places, even in cities, is being done by the mothers.
Yeah. Uh, Rachita Prasad, who has written about you in Economic Times, she said that many readers found your story in particular very inspiring. So it's amazing that the more it's very awesome to hear what your story, and hopefully it will inspire many other PSU sector employees to sign up also. My next question is, can you please tell us the kind of work that you're doing with your trust right now? What all activities that you're doing? How are you helping children?
The major activity that we conduct every year is the Pratibha Poshak Award function in our native place called Gubi, where we honor and also give cash prizes to around 25 to 30 top scoring from the nearby village schools. And so we honor
10th standard.
and also we honor the students in 10th standard who have scored center. So this approximately we do it in my native place also. This is covered 75,000 to 80,000 every year. Again, depending upon some years we get more number of students, some years we get net number of students. And in the same function, we try to felicitate the good teachers to keep them encouraged to do more better in this thing. Then we conduct workshops we conduct workshops on personality development and also student related things like how to plan your studies or how to etc. These are attended by more than 500 to 600 students, because in a city like Bangalore or in a bigger town, there are CSR, there are conference rooms, there are training agencies which conduct the rural students, which are missing in rural areas.
So this we are doing, and now please conduct this seminar one more time, please conduct this seminar one more time, like that. We bring in faculties from Bangalore or Mysore, from from a very good organizations, and we are conducting this two to three times in a year.
And we have been associated with Pratham Books, who have brought out beautiful books in both English and vernacular language, with very simple themes of life narrated in English as well as the local languages. And some very good artists in India have painted very relevant pictures matching those narratives. These books come in level 1, level 2, level 3. The difficulty level keeps on increasing. Each of that set of book is around 5,000 rupees worth, which has got 124 books, each 3 or 4 copies. So we have donated almost 10 such, it is called a library in a classroom kit, to 10 schools, so that they are hung in the open space in the school courtyard, so students can take the books whenever they want. And we have arranged use of those books to increase the learning.
Government school.
And any we visit the governments which are located within a 10 to 15 kilometer radius of we first hand go and see what are the infrastructural deficiencies they have got, what are is there any problem with the sports material, or is there any teaching and other kind of dates for
Uniform.
so uniform. So if and survey actually is required, then based on that survey, we prioritize the schools depending upon their deficiency. Then we allot trust to each of the schools.
Medical.
And in one or two emergency medical cases, we have helped the brain surgery of one kid studying in 10th standard. Also, we have helped the nasal surgery of lower standard children, even though we were not able to fully bear the cost of the surgery. When there were many, we also should chip in with some 5,000, 2,000. So, but that way, because of our initiation, they were able to fully recover the cost of the surgery and treatment because of philanthropic donations.
Not only believe in giving materials, we also go and teach time.
Yes, ma'am. It's fantastic that you also not only philanthropy is not only about money, but also you're personally engaged and also you give significant amount of your time into these causes. We have a question from one of our audience, Tunisha. She's asking, how do you have such a big heart to do all of this?
And then college singing.
So I tell you once, which my wife was recounting yesterday when I was preparing for this meeting. She was doing her engineering in Mysore in Sri Jayachamrajendra College of Engineering, which is one of the top institutes, which is almost 50 years old. There she had got a free seat and lot of fighting in their house, whether to send her, not to send her. We don't have money. She will get morally corrupted. You will get spoiled. She had in a hostel or a rented accommodation. Finally, her mother select worked and she joined the college. One day she was literally sobbing yesterday when she recounted that incident to me. One day when she was going to the college to attend the classes, suddenly the city bus came and checked her pass. She never knew that it had expired. We told her, you get up. She had to get on because she did not have even 1 paisa note in her pocket to pay the fare for the remaining part of the journey and reach the college. She cried the whole, in fact, yesterday she cried that we came up from that level to this level. So there are countless incidents like this which might have happened with both of us, which we think we should try to help somebody else.
Wow, that is really, touching. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Experiences. So that has led to us to start this charity.
I pray God many should be born poor so that there will be more philanthropists.
No, rather than many people being born poor, I think stories like yours need to be spoken a lot in the media. These are the stories that people need to hear, and hopefully they will be inspired with hearing stories such as yours, and they'll start giving back more. Yeah. I just want to ask you a question. You read about Living My Promise in a news article back in 2018 and immediately decided to join. How did you make that decision even when you knew none of the promises? You didn't know any one of us. You didn't know anything about Living My Promise. You just read the article and you reached out to us and you signed up.
Of course, we had as such a bent of mind for philanthropy. When we read about this, I feel for any good cause of the society, there should be a beginning. And by signing into LMP, we were very sure that we are not going to give all our 50% money to any trust or any organization. We are only committing now on a public platform that we are going to do this with our own money. Because we already had the idea of forming a trust. We already knew that whatever money that I am going to give, I am not going to give it to somebody else. Whatever I am going to spend on philanthropy is spent under the direct supervision of we both people under the auspice of whatever trust we had formed. But we were really stunned that at least there has been a campaign to draw people like us who are very non-descriptive, who are worth 1 crore, both into the ambit of only campaign grows in the years to come, more and more middle can join this, and the really equivalent or more than what many industrial houses or trusts are doing. And being the promisers, we always knew that we will have access to monthly meetings. We will have that you always can find out what somebody else is doing. You can borrow the ideas and so on.
Continuously live my promise.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, hopefully living with promise is also helping you. I mean, you're also gaining from this initiative, I hope. Yeah. So, what do you think? How can we encourage philanthropy in our society? Do you think talking about philanthropy encourages others to join this movement?
But to put forth my very frank views on this, I feel presently in most of the cases, well-being is well-being of self, well-being of spouse, and well-being of only offsprings. Setting aside some money from the personal funds for helping people who are in need, sorely missing. I can quote you a very small example. We launched a campaign to donate books to rural schools through Pratham Books a month ago. In fact, we were reluctant to take any fundings. We had very bad experiences, but still the Pratham Book told us to start a campaign so that it is not to get money or to get name. It at least
Spread the word.
Spread the word. It will invite people to take part. So after 26 days of campaign, it is only another 4 days remaining. I have received just 5,000 rupees, against my target of 50,000 rupees. And I have sent in the link not once but twice to almost 25 to 30 people for the past 25 to 30 years. For all very well off, who get very good salaries, for all very well settled in life. Still, I am unable to ignite that passion to do philanthropy in spite of this type of campaign.
Minimum amount they can contribute is rupees
100 in our campaign.
100 in this campaign.
So I don't think it's not very easy to make people commit for this kind of causes, at least in the prevailing situation.
Yeah. I have another question for you. You know, you are very much immersed in the rural settings. Like, you know, your backgrounds are from rural areas. You know, you're working right now with those rural students. But most people in urban areas, you know, there is some sort of disconnect with the life in rural areas. How can we get urban people to understand, you know, the challenges being faced in the rural areas, like in rural India?
Sir, I think, thank God, to a certain extent, that disconnect has been reconnected by COVID. All around this place, I see people who are staying in Bangalore for last 10 years, 15 years, all have come back, all have again started to get into agriculture, etc., etc. But unless you make the urban students to visit 1 or 2 rural schools where there are no infrastructure, there is nothing. You should make them to see the conditions of those schools and the children. I think that is one way to make people understand that there are people who are living with much or nothing compared to what
With bare minimum facilities.
with bare minimum facilities. And when it comes to philanthropy, I can experience reaction to philanthropy is concerned. Whenever we try to tell the people about the trust we have created, the kind of the kind of money we have put in, personal money we have put in, and also our signing to Olympic campaign, there is always an excuse like, no, you don't have children. See, I got a girl and a boy. I invested so much on his education. And if you had a girl, you would have spent around so many lakhs on her marriage. So all these things are not there for you, no. So you can do it. So this is the most diplomatic way of saying no, is what I have experienced quite a few cases. And I also can tell you a case when one of my known fellow donated 2,000 rupees to our trust. But at that point of time, I never knew that this is going to be. After 6 months, he came, I want your trust to pay the 20,000 rupees fees of my maid's daughter. I said no, because your maid's daughter is in Bangalore. And the very parameters and the motto of our trust is to support the rural education. So this case doesn't fit at all into our criteria. But then I realized, then he was not very happy. In a way, I started talking, I have given you 2,000 rupees. So it is 2,000 versus 20,000. That is one of the incident that we decided we will not take donations from people, but I will be failing in my duty if I do not mention. We have a great old man who is 85 years old. His name is Dr. Jayaraman and his wife Padma, who have settled down in Bangalore after spending almost 40 to 45 years in America. He was leading one of the top chemical companies, but today also he is living in a rented house in Malleshwaram. He says, why do we really need a house? These people have donated 1 lakh rupees to our trust twice without even asking what we are doing with that. So when such people are still there in this world, it increases our responsibility to spend whatever donations we have got in a just unbiased way without the differentiation of caste, creed, and community and religion.
Sir, is the link donatabook.org.in/campaign/GHVS trust? Is that the link?
Yes.
Okay. Some of our viewers want to right now contribute to this. I'm sharing this link on the Living My Promise page for viewers who are there. Below is the link for GHVS Trust run by Javali Ramanath and Uma Katyayani. Please donate. So let's see. I hope I have posted the link on our Living My Promise live comment page right now. For viewers who are interested in donating.
Thanks a lot, Sufyan.
Yeah, just give me a minute, sir. I'm just posting this. Let's ensure that you reach your target. For some reason, I'm unable to post. So viewers who are watching, like as mentioned, some of the experiences that ma'am was talking of when she had to be, taken off the bus because she couldn't afford 1 paisa from that day. And today they're doing some fantastic work of, helping rural students, helping overcome, ensuring that they do not face the same challenges that, Umaji and Ramanaji faced in their childhoods. They are self-made, overcoming all sorts of odds. Hopefully we can, support them, in their efforts that they are trying to do with their own small trust that they have created. They have pledged to give back 50% of their whole wealth for charitable causes. They've been doing some amazing work. They've dedicated their entire lives to this. So I have pasted the link in our comment section. I will also read the link for you. It is called donatabook.org.in/campaign/GHVS trust. I'll be very happy if the viewers who are watching can go to the link and donate some amount for and supporting their cause. So thank you, sir. It's been a fantastic session. Your story, like, it reminds me of what my father tells me frequently of how they lived in a hut, how their entire life. He used to tell me this all the while in his childhood, like, how they had to walk like 8 kilometers, 7 kilometers to school, how they had no uniform. I mean, the kind of odds they overcame. They had no parents and all that. I mean, when you talk of your story, it only reminds me of my own parents' strugglehood, how they brought up their own brothers, how my father brought up his own brothers. My mom also tells that I was the mother unofficially to my father's brothers.
When in middle school, we never used to have money to buy notebooks. Then one Bangalore Press calendar used to come where the backside used to be empty, white. So every year after the academic this thing, we used to beg for these calendars, old calendars, make them exercise books by stitching them with a needle and thread, and use that vacant side of calendar as our notebooks. We have lived like this for years and years. And we never in our life have bought new textbooks because 9 people. So every year there will be somebody above you in some class. So you will get his books, you will get his uniforms. So this way we have almost crossed over for first 10 years of our education till SSLC.
Yeah. Now you're reminding me of my childhood also. All my brother's clothes would come to me. I had many such experiences.
To pass on the legacy.
Sure, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for this amazing Saturday live session. And viewers who are watching, please check the comment section for the donate link, in the comment section, and please do contribute to their campaign. Thank you once again. Next week we'll be joining with another promiser, Mr. Ganesh Natarajan. We'll be live at the same time. Please do join us back on at 11 a.m. next Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Bye.